And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, everybody? Gene Baradelli here. Ross Galloway will be joining me momentarily because he's got one of those computers that decided to do an automatic start, one of those updates right now. In fact, here he is,
Yeah.
right on time as always. How you doing, man?
Jeez, man, I couldn't stop it.
It's all listen. It's all good. Back in the day, that would have caused a migraine.
Oh my
Nowadays,
God.
I'm fine. I don't even care.
I
It's all
was
good.
sweating.
Yeah, believe me, I used to be sweating. Remember back in the days when we would go live on an actual terrestrial radio station and we're not ready and we're getting all set up and I'm connecting wires and moving stuff around and all that.
Oh my
I
God.
couldn't
No.
care. You were just fine. It was no big deal. So I'm glad you made it though. How you doing? We didn't get a chance to talk before the show. How things?
I'm doing well. Everything's great. No complaints.
All right, cool. Man, a few words. I can dig it. People are slowly settling in here in different places, whether they're on the YouTubes, they're on the
Well, what's
Rumbles,
on
they're
the
on
agenda?
Twitter.
I feel terrible just jumping.
Listen, let's do a little bit of bullshit, and we're okay. Calm down. We got plenty to talk about on the agenda. There's been a lot of news breaking. The last time we got together, we were talking about the imminent endorsement of RFK Jr. Of Donald Trump, and I feel like I got to point this out. I don't know if you deserve this now or not. I honestly, but Galloway was right. He was right about a point he made on last week's show. Let's go to the clip right now and let's give Ross some time to settle in.
The irony will be this: if RFK Jr. comes out on Friday and endorses Donald Trump, the Democrats will go back to court in various states to ensure that RFK Jr.'s name remains on the ballot in order to draw votes away from Trump, because their only goal is power.
He said it last week, and it took only a couple of days, and he was absolutely right. Take a bow, Ross. You nailed that one. We're going to keep a running tally of all the times that you're right from now on.
I can't believe you actually pulled up a clip. That was awesome.
Well, listen, I mean, when you're right, you're right.
Here.
When you're right, you're right. And it turns out that RFK Jr. is having some trouble with different states, particularly Wisconsin and Michigan, because they have election laws that prevent him from removing himself from the ballot. Ross, I have this whole legal analysis already set up to go if you want. But let's start out with just your initial thoughts about the concept of a state setting up a law that would prevent you from freely withdrawing from an election. What do you think about that?
I mean, there's a whole host of issues here, right? And, speaking from the New York perspective, which you're a legal expert on, you've been through many cases involving situations just like this. This is one of the reasons why like these third-party candidacies always muck everything up, right? Because they inevitably play the spoiler. Whether they stay in, get out, get offered in New York, you get offered a judgeship, and you come off the ballot, which I'm sure you'll talk about. But my gut feeling is just sort of a novice on this topic, especially with all 50 states, is why is Joe Biden able to come off the ballot?
So right? Good question. I was prepared for that one as well.
You argue the convention part, but I'm sure they started printing ballots because that absentee ballots are going out in like a week in some states.
Well, let's get into I'm going to answer that question in a moment. I just want to get into what the law actually says in Wisconsin and Michigan concerning withdrawal from the ballot. So let me just pull up the Wisconsin law first. It's election law 8.35 sub 1. Can you see that on the screen? Do I have to lower it down a little bit maybe? It's the highlighted part here. Vacancy after nomination. Any person who files nomination papers and qualifies to appear on the ballot may not decline nomination. Pretty cut and dry, it seems. The name of that person shall appear upon the ballot except in case of death of the person. So for Wisconsin's sake, RFK has to kick the bucket in order to get his name off the ballot. A person who is appointed to fill a vacancy in nomination. Now, this is a situation where if he would die and there would be an enumerated committee to fill vacancies that would have appeared on the filing papers in Wisconsin. I don't know if necessarily they have to do petitions or not, but whatever the filing papers are, that's what they would be, this committee to fill vacancies, or who is nominated by write-in votes is deemed to decline nomination if he or she fails to file a declaration of candidacy within the time prescribed under sub 2C. Now, sub 2C, I think, might have the answer to what you wanted to know, Ross, at least as far as for Wisconsin. Long story short, on sub 2C, or whatever the appropriate section is, the deadline for filing the nomination for this year in Wisconsin was September 3rd. So Biden could have freely gotten off the ballot in Wisconsin as long as the nomination was filled by somebody via the convention on September 3rd. So that's the difference between the two. RFK Jr. had gotten in his documents early enough to put to get his nomination completed. Once it's completed, Wisconsin says you can't do anything anymore. At least that's what the Board of Elections would say. Whether or not a court would back that up, I don't know, to be perfectly honest with you, because then you're talking about issues of whether or not this law is constitutional or not, and that can pretty much go anywhere, possibly in federal court.
What does your gut say is the spirit of that law? Like, why would any state have a law that says you can't come off the ballot?
For the same reason that we say that in New York and we have these strict deadlines for the election law, it's that you have to make allowances for bureaucracy. You have to make allowances for when ballots are going to be printed and circulated properly. Absentee balloting is going to be happening in some states. Early voting is going to be happening in some states. So they need to set a deadline for solidifying the nomination. That being said, we're in freaking August. It's not like we're on the eve of the election. It's not like a delete button is that hard to do. If it's an Excel document, you delete the row. You know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal. When it comes to Michigan, though, it's a little bit different. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch screens out. I've got a lot of buttons to push tonight. Let's see if I can get this one up. What happens in Michigan is that RFK Jr. is not an independent candidate necessarily. He has a party that is being circulated for him. I believe it's called the Natural Law Party. And in Michigan, it's this section here, section 168.686A. And I believe if we go down a little further, I have to find the exact section about what it says about withdrawal. Let me see if I can find it real quick here as I'm scanning. This is the part where show prep would have been possible. There it is. It is the last sentence of subsection 2 of the law. If a candidate is so certified with the accompanying affidavit of identity and certificate of acceptance, which is kind of like what we do here in New York. We have to do a nominating certificate. We have to put in petitions. Then if they're not a part of our party, the candidate has to put in a certificate of acceptance. The name of the candidate shall be printed on the ballot for that election. Candidates nominated and certified shall not be permitted to withdraw. So similar law to what's happening in Michigan, probably similar rationale. I don't have to like it, but it is what the law is there. The only way that I can see challenging it is not necessarily through state processes. You can't go through state court for this, because if you remember from our discussions about election law prior to this, Ross, election law is the product of statute, not common law, which means that a judge doesn't really have discretion to make their own decision, regardless of how they think it's right or wrong or indifferent. They have to follow the letter of the statute. If the statute says shall not be removed, then the court has no leeway, no discretion to deal with it. If it says may not be removed, there may be some discretion that's granted by the legislature to the judge. So that leaves federal court, in my opinion, whether or not such a restriction on removal from the ballot, whether or not that violates the Constitution, and whether or not there is a basic freedom or a fundamental right that is being violated in keeping someone on the ballot. And that's for a research point for much smarter lawyers than I am.
You want to hear the irony, Gene? Is
Sure.
I don't know if you've been following the New York case that RFK is involved in.
Oh, I have been, absolutely.
So New York won't let RFK onto the ballot. They're claiming he's not a legal resident of New York, even though he
Yeah.
owns property there, votes there, his DMV records are there, and in every state that he's qualified for the ballot, he used his New York address because most states require you to use the address at which you vote from, and it's New York. And the irony is, New York State, the safeguard, the guardians of democracy, won't let him on the ballot in New York. How crazy is that?
Well, so from my
So he
understanding,
can't get himself off the ballot in those other states, and New York won't let him on.
Yeah, lawfare. It's fantastic. I believe in California, he may have put down his California residence to show that he was domiciled in California. Then he went to the People's Republic of New York, said he votes out of New York, and I think they started to claim fraud because when they inspected the property that he's maintaining, which I think is a lease property, it's like a one-bedroom studio type deal that his family wouldn't necessarily fit into, and that's why they determined it was fraud. And you know this as well as I do. The determination of fraud by the court, kind of a big deal. Now, this is, I believe, getting appealed up the chain to see if he can get restored to the ballot. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. I don't even know if he wants to spend the money on that or not, to be perfectly honest with you. But that's sort of the state of the election law. Now, let's talk about what you want to talk about, the spirit of the law. It seems like it doesn't make sense that if someone doesn't want to keep running for office, that they're not allowed to stop running for office. I don't know what the deal with that is. I think it's because of deadlines and scheduling, and because you have absentee ballots to print, because you have military ballots to print that are going overseas, and the ballot has to remain consistent from all those different types of ballots, whether it be a military ballot, an absentee ballot, an affidavit ballot, or the ballot you get at the polling place. All of them have to be the same. They have to be uniform. So while I understand there has to be a deadline, we're still in August, and people can still get the mail out in plenty of time to have everyone vote and return that ballot before Election Day proper. To me, I just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the way you just described it actually does make sense to me. So you do have to have some kind of deadline because, like you said, you can't just maybe you could take them off the voting machines, but the ballots that got mailed out, the name would still appear, and that would throw off the whole election count. But what's compounding this problem is election quarter of the year, basically, right? Because now we vote for 2 or 3 months as opposed to a very consolidated election day, maybe a few weeks earlier, absentee ballots and military ballots go out. And in the case of the military ballots, you allow a few days after election day for them to actually come in, as long as they were sent, prior to election day. When you start talking about 3 months to vote, now all of a sudden a candidate wants to drop out. I don't know, 90 days before an election, he can't drop out. It just doesn't make sense.
It's actually much worse than that, and then we'll move on to some other topics here. It's actually much worse than that because a national election is not one election. It is 50 different statewide elections. But it's also not 50 statewide elections because within each state, there are county elections that are being administered. Every election in most states, as I understand it, is run by the counties. At least in the People's Republic of New York, you have, what is it, 62 different counties that administer elections, each with their own rules and deadlines that are prescribed by the state, and they certainly have to follow them. But they have their own little quirks and idiosyncrasies, as we've dealt with ourselves in the People's Republic of New York. So it becomes a real challenge for a nationwide campaign to keep track of all these deadlines, to keep track of what state has a deadline of September 3rd, what state has a deadline of September 10th, what state has a deadline in May, what state has a deadline in June. It's like herding cats at some point. And because election law is the product of statute, there's no leeway, there's no discretion, there's no exceptions when it comes to these deadlines. And I'll leave this last one, I'll let you get the last word. You mentioned, having not just an election day, you have an election month now in many respects. There have been some discussions, and I don't know if this has been taken up in federal court yet, but there have been some discussions that the election day, the election week, the election month should really just be election day, at least for the presidential race, because The presidential election is the only election prescribed in the Constitution to occur on a specific date. It's not necessarily set by the calendar, the political calendars of these states. It's set by the Constitution. So there may be an argument out there one day down the line, I don't know, saying that, sure, you can have your election weekend or election month for every lower office. But for federal elections, or for at least the presidential election, it should be done on the second Tuesday of November.
Yeah. What else? I just wanted to throw this in there, Gene. So I understand the Constitution and that choosing electors and as far as the presidential race, it's mentioned in the Constitution election, I should say. But what's interesting is, and I'm a fan of decentralization, by the way. I do think the states should run these things. But in light of the recent Supreme Court decision that stopped various states from throwing President Trump off the ballot, it just seems that in a nationwide election, which the president and the vice president are the only offices elected nationally, right? I think a discussion should be had on ways to ease ballot access, right? Because you'll never get a third party like the Whigs or whatever again, right? It can't happen with 50 different states having their own rules, deadlines, like you said. Even the subdivisions in there are counties and different boards of elections that can throw you off the ballot. You have some jurisdictions that are letting non-citizens vote in municipal elections. Those people might hold positions on their board of elections, which can race potentially, right? So I don't know. I think we need to tighten up election law across the country and maybe look at some national guidelines as far as not running elections, because I don't think the federal government has any business running a local election or even choosing electors for the presidency, but having some sort of standard of ballot access. You really can't have 50 different states choosing how you get onto the ballot when the Constitution prescribes what are the qualifications for president. And that's what the Supreme Court used to say that various states couldn't kick Trump off. It's only 35 years old. Couldn't have a. It's at 35, you got to be born in the country, you got to live here a certain number of years, right? It's very specified what the qualifications are to be president, and it just doesn't seem right that other candidates can't get on the ballot because of all these hoops they have to jump through.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, just so you know, you're lagging a little bit on my end. They may be seeing it out there. I'm not worried about it. It is what it is. But yeah, I agree with you. There needs to be some sort of federal intervention, I think, when it comes to a clarification of what the Constitution means for when election day is, and maybe a constitutional standard about withdrawing from an election for president. We'll see in the coming years, maybe. But for now, these are sort of the rules that we're stuck with here with RFK Jr. But we got a lot more to talk about here. I want to get to certain things, but listen, Galloway was right, and I'm going to start keeping a running tally of all that. Let's move on to some other news of endorsements this week. Tulsi Gabbard has joined Team Trump. Now, I'll give you some time to catch up on the lag there, Ross, but I think we all saw this coming. I think we all saw Tulsi Gabbard joining Team Trump based upon the shabby treatment that the Democrats have had towards her, and also because Kamala Harris is the seemingly sworn enemy, the nemesis of Tulsi Gabbard. Were you surprised that Tulsi jumped on Team Trump?
I was somewhat surprised, only because she's been riding the fence for so long. Everyone knew she wasn't like a real modern day Democrat, right? From the last election cycle. She's a field grade officer in the Army Reserves, and Hillary Clinton accused her of being an agent of Putin during the 2016 during the last cycle, which was insanity, right? So I'm somewhat surprised, although if we're to believe the Trump campaign, they're saying like to buckle up because there's more to come. We've seen RFK, Tulsi. Before that, we had Elon, and more to come. Let's see. I think that there are a large group of Democrats out there that are former Democrats. Really, they just haven't made the switch yet. And welcome aboard, Tulsi. Welcome aboard, anyone else. Just real quick on this note, Gene. So a lot of people on our side of the fence, they don't want to welcome these people in. They're saying Trump is like a rhino now, and he's like bringing in non-Republicans. It's like, okay, dude, like, do they understand you have to get 50% plus one to win an election, right? And on top of that, you need to win the Electoral College on a national level, right? So you don't win by just narrowing your base down to I'm against abortions at all costs, which maybe I do support that, right? But you have to leave some room for people to disagree on certain issues, right? If you're a one-issue voter, go join a one-issue party. That's not what the main parties are. The Democrats have become that. And the Republicans were going down the same road until Trump took to the scene.
You're kind of stealing my thunder here for my final thought that I'm going to be going into later at the end of the show. But yeah, I wasn't surprised about Tulsi Gabbard supporting Trump, mainly because Kamala Harris is in the race. What I was surprised by was the serendipity of what has been occurring in the news that is sort of building more momentum for a Tulsi endorsement. And I'm going to let Tulsi Gabbard explain that herself from this clip from Fox News after she made her endorsement, and also after she accompanied former President Trump to Arlington National Cemetery.
You were there today along with President Trump. How important was it for him to be there today?
You know, one thing that ran through my mind as I was there, joining President Trump and honoring the ultimate sacrifice that these 13 service members paid, sharing the sorrow that these Gold Star families still feel and will always feel at the loss of their loved ones. Meanwhile, where is Kamala Harris? Where is Joe Biden? Well, Joe Biden's on vacation, and Kamala Harris is running a campaign based on joy and vibes and laughing her way around. I can tell you who wasn't laughing were those families, some of the survivors of that attack in this disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal.
And by the way, that's what I was talking about. The timing of this was, from a political planning standpoint and from a political stagecraft standpoint, pretty damn good. Because you have Tulsi Gabbard, who first and foremost is an advocate for veterans. You have this ceremony in Arlington for the soldiers that were killed in Afghanistan, which, by the way, many attribute to the botched withdrawal that the Biden administration did, or should I say the Biden-Harris administration nowadays, and how they ended up changing the plan that Trump had laid out prior to his leaving office for this botched plan that led to the death of these service members. And then Kamala Harris barely recognizing the anniversary of that. But there's President Trump acting presidential along with Tulsi Gabbard by his side. It just all fell into place for Team Trump, don't you think, Russ?
Yeah, 100%. I just want to touch on the Afghanistan thing briefly. So, like, the Democratic talking points have been that they inherited a botched plan, like you said, from Trump with a specified date and certain conditions, right? But that's bullshit, and everyone knows that. Even if there was a date on paper, a tentative date, no one would have withdrew in the manner in which we withdrew if there was an adult in charge, right? President Obama had dates where he wanted to get out of Afghanistan. President Trump, first term, had dates that he wanted to get out of Afghanistan. Biden did not have to stick to that date. He did not stick to anything else that Trump put into motion before he took office. Did not to stick to that date. And speaking of the Arlington thing, just real quick, and Tulsi kind of mentioned this, where the hell is Joe Biden? I know where he is, right? Like, he was on vacation in California. He's laying on a beach in Delaware now. But did he just quit on us, honestly? Right? Donald Trump was there doing presidential duties. Where is the president and vice president?
He's on vacation number 2. That's what he's doing.
But since he withdrew from the race, he's been on vacation almost the entire time. Who the hell is running our country right now?
Great question. Who the hell knows? Let's let Tulsi continue, because she really does make a good point.
It's personal for me, Judge, and so many other Americans who know firsthand the cost of war. We've seen and experienced it firsthand. We know how important it is to have a commander-in-chief who values every single one of our lives and who has the strength and the courage to exercise all means of diplomacy, meeting with dictators, allies, adversaries, partners in the pursuit of peace, recognizing that war is always and should always be a last resort. I endorse President Trump today because he has those qualities and he's proven that he is that commander-in-chief. Kamala Harris has proven she is not. We're closer to the brink of nuclear war now than ever before, closer to World War III because of Harris and Biden and their policies.
You know, Tulsi, a mother of one of the slain troops spoke out against Kamala Harris today. Take a listen.
Yeah, I this was on CNN, by the way, that Fox is bringing into their coverage. I definitely want to get your thoughts after this clip, Ross.
Vice President Harris is now running to be commander-in-chief. I wonder, do you have a message for her?
You are with the whole administration in all of this. You hold the same accountability as President Biden does. You were right beside him in making these decisions. This administration has tried to sweep it under the rug, and that's absolutely not going to work for this nation.
You know, Tulsi, your response to that?
Before we get Tulsi's response, I'd rather have Ross's response.
Yeah. I mean, you can't hold her accountable if she doesn't speak to the media, right? I know she's doing some canned interview tomorrow on CNN that's going to be pre-recorded, and it's with Dana Bash, a big left-winger. But she said she was the last person in the room on this decision. She was, in fact, the border czar, right? But she has held positions on everything, and now they're supposedly different, but not from her own mouth. We haven't heard anything from her. No one's been able to ask her a question. This is the basement Biden strategy 2.0, and she's going to try to run the clock out and not have to answer a damn question about any of this. And it won't matter, right? Her voters are drones, and they're stupid, most of them.
Galloway's freaking psychic for this show, because we're going to be talking about that in the next segment as well here. Man, you're on today. Let's go to Tulsi's response.
You know, I want to know if Kamala Harris has personally called every one of these 13 families and the families of those who came home injured. There was a triple amputee there today, there to honor the loss of his brothers and sisters. Has she called them to apologize for the decision that they made that resulted in this disastrous withdrawal and an explosion and an attack that took these 13 service members' lives that was completely preventable? Kamala Harris is completely unfit to serve as our commander-in-chief. Voters, regardless of whether you're Democrats or Republicans, need to know that truth, because that's really what this election is about, Judge. It's not about Democrats versus Republicans. Right. It's about having a president who stands for freedom, peace, and prosperity, which is Donald Trump, versus having a president in Kamala Harris who attacks our freedoms and censors us and uses political retaliation, who has pushed us to the brink of war, and who's created this economic hardship for Americans across the country. That's really the choice that we have before us. And for me, as a service member, as a veteran, it's a very clear choice. I love our country. I cherish peace and freedom, and I'm supporting Donald Trump in this election so that he can be our commander-in-chief once again.
And I think that's a nice way to sum it up here. But what I'm seeing here from the Trump campaign, Ross, is a lot of bright lines being created as we get closer to, like, Labor Day is always sort of this artificial moment where campaigns seem to think that, okay, everybody's getting back to their regular everyday life. Summer's over. Everybody's getting into their routine. School's back in session and all that. We're seeing the Trump campaign creating some very bright lines. This election is a battle between freedom and communism. This battle is a battle between, peace and war. This is a battle between the evil Democrats versus the coalition of the willing set up by Trump and RFK. That they're on the side of freedom and that the Democrats are on the side of tyranny. That they're on the side of peace and that the Democrats are on the side of war. This, to me, is the best thing that could happen to Trump, because if he has these bright line themes out there, he's only going to benefit when he's out there on the stump making these very simple comparisons.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you need to contrast it with something else, though, right? And right now, Kamala is allowing Trump and the campaign to paint a picture of her. I don't know how much mainstream media traction he's gaining, but he's labeling her a communist, all these things, and she's yet to really respond. The only responses that are trickling out from her campaign are her reversals on positions that she previously held the last time she ran for office, right? So if they wait it out like I think they're trying to do, that will benefit them. You have to have contrast. So the only way to get contrast is for the media to ask her the tough questions. Donald Trump says you're a communist. You are proposing taxing unrealized gains. How would you do that, Miss Harris? Right? Then now you have a real campaign, commercial or ad. I just want to jump back to what Tulsi said. I almost called her Gabby Giffords. What Tulsi said when she said, did she call the families of those fallen troops? I get the political, dig there, but I'm more concerned, and this is why if we had a real media, they'd ask her these questions, because I do think she's unfit to be president, not because she didn't call those grieving family members, but more so, why that date of the withdrawal? Why that hard date of 9/11 of that, why the chaotic nature of the withdrawal once it started going bad? Did any senior military brass advise against it? Why are we supporting Ukraine really? Right? Why were you in support of the Iran deal, years ago with the Biden administration? Why? Let her articulate these positions. She can't, right? Nobody can, because they're untenable positions to have. But the media is not doing their job. She's only going to agree to one debate. It's going to be a softball debate, I think. I don't think Trump's going to get the knockout blow like he did with Biden. She's going to try to do that I'm talking here line that she used on that dummy Pence, and it worked on him because he was too much of a gentleman to say screw you. It's frustrating, man. She's getting away with running a shadow campaign, right? Unelected, got no votes, stole the nomination. I'm no fan of Joe Biden, but I don't blame Joe Biden for laying on a beach right now and saying, you know what, fuck it. You want it, have at it.
Absolutely. So we're right around halftime here on the show, which is where I normally do the grift. So I'm going to do the grift. Thanks for tuning in to Behind Enemy Lines. I'm Gene. He's Ross. And we're glad you're here with us. And while you're here with us, please subscribe to the channel, wherever you may be, whether it be on YouTube, on Rumble. Like us and follow us on the Twitters, where you're watching right now. And if you're watching the video and you haven't smashed the thumbs up button, please do so right now. We've had more than our share thus far, and we appreciate everybody that has been tuning in doing that. And by the way, you might notice we got merch. Shirts like this one I'm wearing right now, the Less Government, More Fun shirt, available right now at shop.buffoonertheweek.com. You can check out a lot of different designs. We're going to be updating them throughout the campaign season. And they're a lot of fun. This has always been a great conversation starter. I know Ross has his as well. And whenever we would be walking around at a political event and people would see this, it would always get a response. I go to the grocery store now, Ross. I get a response on my Less Government, More Fun shirt. It's freaking hilarious.
People love that one.
Absolutely. So check us out, shop.buffoonertheweek.com. You can also buy the book as well on Amazon, Shooks, Crooks, Liars, and Scoundrels, and all the other good stuff that we normally talk about. Ross wants to talk about Kamala Harris being in hiding. Let's talk about Kamala Harris being in hiding. Here's the deal. Kamala Harris, for the past, I guess it's been now 38 days, has not given an interview to anybody in the press. She has largely been speaking out of canned speeches and manufactured political moments and just a lot of stagecraft that you see at the convention or you see at a rally. And she's accompanied by, different dancers twerking or artists singing and whatever. And then when they stop singing, they all leave. This has been the Kamala Harris campaign. It's been a mile wide. It's been an inch thick. It's just not working. So what I want to know is, how is an interview along with Tim Walz on CNN with Dana Bash that's pre-recorded going to quell any of the questions about whether or not Kamala Harris can find a coherent sentence?
It won't for anyone that's rational, right? But the base of that party, it's dominated by people with mental illness. Let's just be for real, right? That's the truth. When she speaks, when she spoke at the convention or when she's going to talk about in this interview or even at the debate, Gene, it's going to be all about her own bio, her background. And she could make up whatever she wants it to be, right? Like Trump said, she just turned black a few years ago. When she was running for Senate, she was Asian or Indian, whatever she claimed to be back then. So it's going to be all about, now she's from Oakland, not from Berkeley, even though she grew up in Canada, which is weird too, that we don't talk about, right? All bio. But if you listen to the bio, Gene, she mentions the district attorney, the attorney general spot, being a United States senator. She leaves out her current job quite often when she's discussing her bona fides for office. She doesn't mention she's the vice president currently of the United States, tied to Joe Biden, right? She sang his praises at the convention, but she doesn't mention that in her resume. I wonder why.
She sang his praises at the memorial of Joe Biden.
Yes.
You know? And yes, Deborah, I agree. More creepy joy. It's all about joy, as the ladies are saying in the chats right now. It's all about the joy and the vibe of Kamala Harris. It's nothing about what she's going to be saying. But not everyone at CNN is so sycophantic about this interview. Scott Jennings, former staffer for George W. Bush, former senior aide to Mitch McConnell. Now he's a writer, contributor, much like these politicals become. He called out what this interview is really going to be for Kamala Harris. Very short clip here. Check this out.
The line now going to be, well, why isn't she doing it by herself?
Yeah, I do think people are going to bring that up. Like, I have great confidence in Dana and CNN to do this. I think it's incredibly weak sauce to show up with your running mate. The fact that they don't have enough confidence in her to let her sit herself, the actual top of the ticket, and do a single interview. In fact, I think the hand-wringing and the gyrations over this over the last month show a troubling lack of confidence in her political ability, which also makes you wonder as a voter, well, what kind of president would you be if this kind of a small-time decision, can we do an interview or not, what does that look like for your decision-making process, so on? So, I think Republicans are going to think it's pretty weak to show up with effectively someone to take up half the time.
I totally agree with that. What do you think, my friend?
Yeah, well, Trump and Vance also did a few joint interviews, right? But it's undeniable that Trump gives complete access to not only the mainstream media that hates him, but he's on like a podcast every day with lots of influencers that I've never even heard of, but apparently they're famous people. And he gives access alone, right? He doesn't hang out with J.D. Vance when he's doing these things. He did a couple of joint interviews. Kamala has not. Additionally, Walz cannot either, right? Not because he might not be able to speak to the media, but because he doesn't know what their platform is. He has no clue what she stands for right now. So he can't give a solo interview with anyone because he's going to say what he thinks that they stand for when no one knows what the candidate herself stands for. And I'll just, lastly on this piece with the CNN thing, she's taken over a month to prepare for this canned interview that's going to be her and her running mate, right? On CNN, of all places, right? One of the easiest places for her to go to is CNN. When Trump goes on CNN, which he does, I don't even know why he does it, but he does it. Do you think he's preparing and doing prep for those interviews? I think they're doing prep for Trump before he gets there. They're more scared of interviewing Trump than he is of going there. He probably comes straight off the golf course and goes right into a CNN interview because he knows where he stands. And this, let me just say this about Trump, which will give you some more contrast between him and almost every Democratic candidate. You might not agree with Trump on everything. I certainly do not. But you know where he stands. And if he does evolve on a position, which he has, he'll tell you why, right? He can explain why he thought this a few years ago and why he no longer thinks it. And on some things, he's just stubborn and won't change his opinion. But you know what the opinion is. He never leaves you hanging. The left very rarely will tell you where they really stand, especially during election time, right? If they win, they'll ram things down your throat for the first year of their administration, all the left-wing stuff they want to get through. But as they get closer to a midterm election or an actual presidential election, all of a sudden they become middle of the road. I've evolved. I can't really tell you what my position is on that right now. Why?
Because especially when it comes to Kamala Harris, the position changes with the political breezes. She was hard on crime when she was an attorney general in California. yet she was providing bail for Black Lives Matter during the Summer of Love in 2020. She wants to defund the police. She wants to be pro-police. She does this on every single issue. But, Ross, I have to tell you, we do have some late-breaking news here. I got an exclusive. You're going to love this. I got an exclusive, a look behind the scenes of the interview prep for Kamala Harris. I still can't believe I got this scoop while you were talking right now. But here, check this out, man. This is amazing. Look at the concentration. Look. You see, Walls is coaching her. The softball is right there for her. I love it. T-ball. It's amazing right there. C-ball, hit ball. That's the prep going on right now. I have to say, the memes that are coming out of this, pretty damn funny. I got another one here for you as well. By the way, guys, if you're out there and you want to send in a meme, drop it in the chat if you want. You can always do that for us. Here's another one I got pulled up that someone sent me earlier as well. There's Kamala traveling around with her emotional support Tim, and yeah, I mean they write themselves. This is whatever happens in this interview. The expectation is going to be so high for what it's going to be from the Republicans, and it's going to be so low from the Democrats that you are literally guaranteed to have a shouting match on the social medias talking about look how great she did or look how shitty she did. Am I right on that? You think I got a prediction right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we spoke about this last week. I think it was a huge mistake for her to do this. She's trying to mitigate the possible disaster, right, by having a canned fight with CNN, pre-recorded, and having a partner on the dais with her, right? So I get that. But she made the same mistake Biden made with that debate where they put so much emphasis on this one event. And if that event goes sideways, she's going to have a very difficult time recovering. Her post-convention bump was nearly non-existent, especially since Trump received RFK's endorsement right after her speech that same week, right? It kind of like flatlined, and it's a tied race, supposedly, in most of those swing states right now. So,
yeah, I mean,
she has a bad night on that interview. It might be a wrap.
You know, I checked before we did the show today. I checked the Real Clear Politics polling average on the battleground states from when we did the show on Wednesday going into Thursday to now today. There's been virtually no movement in the battlegrounds from what I'm seeing in the RCP average. Now, some people on the grounds may be saying, "Oh, this is going on here, that's going on there." Republicans are talking about registering voters in Pennsylvania, which is always a good thing. Some Democrats are saying that they're doing the same. We're going to know in maybe 2 weeks where the race stands. And right around that time, you're going to get a debate. And then the debate is going to shake that up all over again. So then you're going to have to wait another 2 weeks before you know where the whole thing stands. And by then, you'll probably have some other political event informing how things are. It's getting pretty wild out there in these streets. So wild, Ross, that it leads me into the next clip I want to show you. And I showed this clip on This Week in Democracy earlier this morning. There's this feeling out there from some buffoons that Kamala Harris shouldn't even say anything at all, and that Democrats should just stop questioning, settle, and Kamala's it, and just vote for Kamala without any further explanation. It's freaking wild, to the point where even other lefties are calling out statements like this. But this is the most egregious one. I'm gonna let this play uninterrupted. It's a little intense, and I'm just gonna say viewer discretion advised.
Quick. But to everybody who, especially the ones who look like me, and the men who look like me, who quick to, if Kamala want my vote, she need to explain herself to me.
Now, Ross, you may be asking yourself, what is an MFer count? It is what you think it is, and we're going to count the usage of the word throughout this clip. The clip's only a minute and a half, basically. Listen to this.
She gonna do for the black people? Listen. Stop asking a black woman to explain themselves to you, or explain themselves to y'all. If y'all ain't willing to ask a white man, then can explain himself. Y'all cool with the white man not explaining himself, his mother stuff to you. Go to black. She need to explain herself to me what she gonna do for the black community. She want my vote. She need to explain herself. You ain't asking the white man to explain his mother stuff. You too much scared to ask him. Somebody need to explain something to y'all. Well, she been in the office already 3.5 years. Why she ain't do all the things she said she was gonna do? Cause she ain't the president. That's.
You see where I'm going with this nonsense. I actually missed one when I did the editing, so I had to put that +1 in there. But with like 30 seconds deep, we got 10 MFers. And how dare you question Kamala Harris at this point? What the hell is wrong with you, man? This is freaking nuts. He's speechless. I got Galloway speechless. Okay, we're going to keep going.
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to get through
No.
this.
You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, let me just jump in here on this guy for a sec. So the Democrats are in a way worse position than the Republicans are right now, right? The reason why this strategy would work for them is because they are truly a big tent of mostly crazy people, right? So she can't come out strongly in support of Israel because she'll piss off enough Muslims in Michigan and possibly lose a swing state. She can't come out and say the truth about what she said a few years ago about mandating electric cars by the year 2040, because right now people are paying insane amounts of money for gasoline, and even people in her own party would be upset with that. She can't say, I still support defunding the police, when that experiment has been tried and the people who have been hurt by it the most are people who live in the inner cities, and those people typically are minorities in higher numbers than whites, right? The Republicans, similar, but it's usually with abortion, right? We have those diehards where, if a candidate says their true feeling on abortion, they might lose a subsection of the Republican Party. They'll just sit out the election. But the Democrats are way worse because it's basically every issue. Kamala is dumb, but I think she is at least smart enough, or surrounded with people that are at least smart enough to know that she really has to hide in the basement, because once she starts explaining her position, she will lose a segment of her own base. And in swing states where it's virtually tied or within the margin of error, she will lose the election.
And that's absolutely right. Deborah wants to know, gee, I would love to get a job without any interview to see if I'm qualified. Boy, wouldn't we all? Who is this homie anyway? This is a rapper named Plies. You may see some clips of him out there in social media. He had a couple of songs I remember back in like 2006 or whatever, because I know all about the hip and the hop.
I was going to say, Gene used to be an R&B, an amateur R&B singer when he lived in Brooklyn.
Man,
and,
I went to Sheepshead Bay High School, motherfucker. Shit. I know my stuff. Stop that nonsense. But listen, the MFR train is not done yet, and there's going to be a ridiculous comparison about Kamala Harris's current job as vice president that is going to... It's hilarious.
When you go to the fucking McDonald's, that lady that's the fucking manager, she don't get to do what the fuck she want to do. She might can give you some fries, but that's about it. Some free fries, that's about all she can do, but she can't change the price of that quarter pound up there. Oh, that fucking Big Mike. That ain't that lady White House. She just like the manager. You fall in line. Now,
the vice president of the United States is just like a manager at McDonald's. Literally what he's saying. I got nothing.
And there are people who are going to, they're paying these influencers, by the way. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't get a check to go on there and make this dumb video.
Whether he is or not, people are listening to this and trying to say that, fall in line behind Kamala Harris. Don't worry about what her record is now. She's just like the manager of McDonald's. She can't change the prices. She's just serving. Are you freaking kidding me? Kamala Harris has had more deciding votes in the Senate as vice president than any other vice president in history, because that's how close the legislature has been in this term. She's had to be in the Senate to cast deciding votes in favor of the Biden plan. I believe she did it for Bidenflation and whatever the rescue plan was that ended up, not really curbing inflation. She's done it on other votes as well. But she's just a manager at McDonald's, and we don't have a right to question her, Ross.
But she also says she's going to lower the costs of all these things once she becomes president. So which is it? We just want to know the how.
Well, listen.
Right?
You know what? You just brought up a great point. She's campaigning that, yes, the economy is bad and prices are high, but we can fix it. Aren't you already in office to try to fix it?
Yeah. So
why did you fix it now?
There's two problems. One is that, right? You're in charge now. Two, and you, like you said, you're the tie-breaking vote on a lot of these things. And the second real problem is you're running for president. So tell us how. I am a fan of platitudes, right? Like, I believe in democracy, and I want the national debt to come down, and I believe that every child should be educated properly. Okay, great. We all believe that. How? Tell us how you're going to do it.
Well, maybe that CNN interview is going to do it, but let's let Plies keep on motherfuckering here.
You can get some free fries out every now and again. You get some free fries out. But y'all know this, most of y'all, but y'all just want something to say. Now, if she was the president and didn't do something, then that's a whole different ball game. And the same who the black woman need to explain this. Y'all the same when Barack was running, he wasn't black enough for you neither. And a lot of y'all, I done figured out what y'all getting confused. Y'all don't even want black. Y'all want ignorant. That's what you want. A lot of y'all think ignorant mean black. And that's why some of you like Trump, because he's ignorant. But I'm here to tell you, everybody black ain't ignorant. And everybody white ain't smart. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. It is real.
Why did we watch that?
we watched it because this apparently is what's going on in these streets. This is what's happening outside of our political bubble, Ross. This is the dialogue that people are hearing. Hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million people probably saw this video. Now, there have been other people out there, saying that this is absolutely the wrong way to think. Like, believe it or not, the gang from the Breakfast Club that we've talked about in the past that are just as politically ignorant sometimes that allows Joe Biden to come on the scene and say, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. They called this out for being stupid. And, of course, it is stupid. But I just want to touch on that one last point. He's actually insulting minority Trump voters by saying, you're voting for Trump because you think that he's more like you because you're ignorant.
Coming from someone that is obviously ignorant, right? Like the guy,
yes.
That party just constantly thinks of people not as individuals, right? Liberalism, classic liberalism is the power of the individual. But the modern Democratic Party thinks of everyone belonging to a group and staying in their box. Women should only care about these things. Black women should definitely only care about these things. Black men should fall in line if there's a black candidate. Like, it's really disturbing what has become of the Democratic Party in a lot of ways. And I hope towards the end we can touch on RFK one more time, because I think he shed a lot of light on this when he jumped into this into the fray last week.
Yeah, well, listen, how dare you question Kamala, though, man? To me, it's I get speechless seeing massive stupidity. And there is so much massive stupidity going on out there that I don't know how to dispel it at this point. I mean, I wrote a book on trying how to identify political buffoon. Okay, we've identified them. But now we got to sort of make them not buffoons anymore or get them off the stage somehow. And it's very hard to do when you have a buffoon of this magnitude coming out there and saying you can't question Kamala Harris because she's a black woman. Just fall in line.
So
I just can't do it.
But whoever that guy was, you know, I understand he wasn't very articulate, right? Dropping MFers every other word. But really, in the substance of what he was saying, Is it much different than what they say on MSNBC or when a Nancy Pelosi says something like, oh, well, if you want to find out what's in the bill, we have to pass it, so you'll find out what's in the bill, right? They count on not only their own voters, but the majority of Americans just being ignorant and dumb and just believing everything that they say. And it's incredibly frustrating, right? When you know that you keep up with current events, you look a little deeper, you look under the hoods of these candidates, you believe in a process, and then when you go to vote on election day or whenever you go to vote, that your vote potentially gets canceled out by some dummy who gets told to vote somebody because they're black or because they're a woman, right? It just doesn't make sense. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, that's the most frustrating thing of it all, is that the way our system is set up, and I believe it's correctly set up this way, there is no intelligence tests for voting, and there shouldn't be. People are entitled to their opinion. As stupid as they may be, they're entitled to that opinion. The mission is to educate people to the point where they become a little more discerning and vote in their own self-interest, rather in the interest of a monolith like the Democratic Party. Well, listen, you know what? We're actually getting closer to the end of the show. You wanted to talk about RFK Jr. for a second, so I'm going to let you get your final thought in. So let me know what you want. If you need me to find a clip, I'll find a clip.
No. Awesome. So I got a two-part final thought, then I'll try to make it as brief as possible.
Make it as long as you want. We got plenty of time.
So one thing is, I don't know if you got a chance to watch the whole RFK speech that he gave when he endorsed Trump. It was like 35, 37 minutes, something like that. If anyone who wants to truly understand the current state of the Democratic Party should listen to what RFK Jr. had to say. It was one of the most powerful speeches I have heard in a long time. And his highlights really were how the media is an organ or has become an organ of the Democratic Party and the government, which is one and the same right now. How the Democratic Party has become the party of the forever war, right? The Ukraine war, the constant conflict around the world. They are supporting forever wars. The Democratic Party has become the party of anti-free speech and the true threat to democracy, right? Like, just look at what has happened over the last few cycles. They are the threat to democracy. And RFK outlined this pretty well. He also threw in that they are the party of big pharma. They have claimed for many cycles to hate big pharma, and they have become the party of big pharma. And then he rounded it out, and he did an awesome job on Tucker with an interview he did with him, which was a lot longer, and it was great as well, where he talked about radical environmentalism. You know, Tucker Carlson and RFK Jr. are environmentalists. But the Democratic Party has some warped view of what environmentalism is, to where, like, you can't open nuclear power plants and everything has to be carbon counts and everything else. Like, it became insane what they do, as opposed to clean air, clean water, and food, good, healthy food for all the people. Just real quickly on a final thought, it's sort of on the same vein here, Gene, is currently or in the next few weeks, the Senate has to pass a spending bill, a budgetary bill. Mike Lee has been tweeting this out a lot, and I agree with him. They also want to attach something called the SAVE Act to that spending bill, which makes it illegal for illegal immigrants to vote in our elections, non-citizens to vote in American elections. It's sort of already the law, but they want to codify it at the federal level and attach it to the spending bill. And guess who's against doing that? Mitch McConnell and company in the Republican side of the Senate, right? And this is what my frustration was over these last few weeks, Gene. The Republican Party is doomed, right? I don't consider myself a Republican anymore because I just can't. They don't know how to fight. The only leverage they have right now is to attach a bill that will require the Democrats to negotiate and expose them, right? Okay, it won't pass and the government gets shut down for a week or two going into an election and the Republicans have to cave. Why are they caving? Because the Democrats won't make it illegal for non-citizens to vote in our presidential election. And the last thing on the Senate side with the Republicans, Gene, which is my fear when Donald Trump wins, God willing, right? We talked about maybe RFK Jr. would get a cabinet position. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard will get a cabinet position. What do cabinet positions require Senate confirmation, right? Will a Republican majority, if they get one, a slim Republican majority in the Senate, or even worse, a Republican minority, force the Democrats' hand to confirm Donald Trump's appointments to his own government, right? I don't think they will. I think it's a pipe dream if you think RFK is going to get a Senate confirmed seat at the table if Trump wins, because the Republicans are pussies.
I'm kind of glad you went inward like that at the end. We talk a lot about Democrats and what's wrong with the Democratic Party and how they are the party of censorship. We just saw Mark Zuckerberg's letter from Facebook saying how he felt pressured by the government to take down even satire about the COVID-19 epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, the virus, etc., all that stuff. The Democrats are certainly bad, but that doesn't mean that the Republicans are good. And I think you highlighted one point of that very well. I actually put a video in for my final thought, pal, because as it says in my bio, I push the buttons around here. And I don't know if you're still on X or the Twitters or whatever they call it nowadays, but there has been a lot of chatter from a lot of accounts that claim to be pro-life that are expressing their disappointment in Donald Trump and the Trump campaign because he said that he does not support a nationwide ban on abortion. Now, we just got through a Supreme Court case that got done saying that the federal government should keep its nose out of the issue of abortion. That is a state issue because the states reserve the powers concerning health care and regulating health care. So we'll leave it to them to decide. So because Donald Trump, who probably made the most significant pro-life agenda since the passage of Roe v. Wade, actually created an environment, excuse me, got a little sore throat, actually created an environment for new justices to get to the bench and to make the law, restore the law the way it should have been this whole time, in my opinion. Now they're pushing the agenda, overplaying their hand, and they're expressing their disappointment for Donald Trump and saying they may not come out and vote for Donald Trump because he's not as passionate about pro-life issues as he's been in the past. This video is just a prime example of that. This is from Lila Rose, one of the leading voices in the pro-life movement, and she had this to say about Donald Trump and the current state of his positions on pro-life matters.
He's actually asking that from Congress. He's saying that the Democrats are extreme on abortion. They're even till post-birth abortion, infanticide. He's saying they cannot speak for themselves. The unborn cannot speak for themselves. And I just want to encourage the Trump campaign to go back to that Trump. People want a fighter. People want someone who's not going to bow to the establishment and bow to the Beltway pollsters and consultants, someone who's not going to waffle and run and hide, someone who's not going to be controlled by the false media narratives. That's what people want right now. That's not what Trump is, for whatever reason, delivering right now. In fact, he's trying to sound like a Democrat on abortion. And the response from the pro-life community right now is crucial. I'm encouraging Trump to get out there and fight for life. And I want to encourage the pro-life community right now. We are 2 months, a little over 2 months out before the election. Minds are still being made up. Candidates are still shape-shifting in many ways. Positions are being shifted and changed. I urge all pro-lifers to come out right now and say, President Trump, stand for life.
So this is just a sample of, there's a lot more to this video. This is just a sample of what's going on out there. And my response to this whole thing is such that my response has any weight or anything. Where the fuck you gonna go if not for Donald Trump? You're gonna stay home and allow the Democrats to win? This is such a close race that you're gonna do that across the nation? How does that further your cause? And by the way, how ungrateful are you to the man that created the environment on the Supreme Court to give you the biggest victory you've had in decades? To where now your path is clear. to go to these 50 states and get the laws changed the way that you want, to advocate there, to actually put in the work there. 50 different battles that you can do, some of which you've won already, because there are some states that have already passed more stricter abortion statutes there. That wouldn't have been done without Donald Trump. And after he does that for you, you're going to stab him in the back because he's a political realist who understands the environment that he created, and that you're going to stand on your idealism and cost the man that gave you this victory, possibly? This is the worst of the Republican Party. This is the purity test that you were talking about earlier, Ross, about how if you're not going to be 100% for me, I'm going to be 100% against you. It's the same thing that we're seeing with RFK Jr., with Tulsi Gabbard. This bullshit purity nonsense from the Republican Party may well be its own undoing. We're less than 70 days away. I don't normally say get in line to people, but stand with the person who stood with you and delivered for you. Otherwise, you're just a different type of hypocrite. You're a hypocrite on the right for me. And that's my final thought, pal. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you, Gene. If we got to lose a couple of those types of people, right, I believe in a lot of things she's saying. But if we got to lose a couple of those types of people to get common sense people like Tulsi Gabbard and the RFKs and all the people that would have followed them into the party, then this is the political realignment we actually may need right now.
Thank you, Diana. You can say it because you're a woman, and I'm not allowed to have an opinion on these issues. So I'm glad that you're saying it. Oh, man. Yeah, and she's right. This election is too important for this. You know what? You know when the time to worry about a national abortion ban is? When you win the presidency, you win the House, and you win the Senate. Then talk about it all you want till the cows come home, and we'll see if the principles stand on this being a statewide issue, if that remains, or if that was just hypocrisy. And that's fine to have that discussion then. But until then, stop putting your cart before our horse. I'll say it finally. Get in line.
I mean, and get in line behind who? It's not like I don't want them to get in line behind the Republican Party. If this is your issue, like you said, after the elect, like get people who agree with you to be elected in every seat across the country in the Congress, right? If it's even constitutional for them to pass something like that, then would it ever get through Congress? Probably not, right? I don't think they'll ever get enough support there. And the nuke option is amend the Constitution if you feel very strongly about it. But
here's where I disagree with you. Here's where I disagree with you on this. It's not about getting behind the Republicans. It's about getting behind Donald Trump, who appointed the 3 justices you needed in order to get Roe v. Wade overturned.
Yes, sir. We're in agreement there. This is what I'm saying. Like I am getting in line behind Donald Trump with everything he's been through and everything he's done. I think he's a decent guy and he's going to run the country very well for 4 years. I have no faith in the Republican Party, which is why I think the Republican Party dies a horrible death after this cycle, whether he wins or loses.
I absolutely agree, pal. You know what? I think we've ranted long enough, and I'm ready to shut this thing down. You ready to go, man? It's getting a little late for this old man.
Shut it down, brother. Shut it down.
All right. Listen, thanks for finally showing up to the show. I really appreciate you making the time tonight. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the show. I'm glad that you came with us behind enemy lines. We're shutting it down, and we're playing our motherfucking theme song. Good night, folks. God bless. And we'll see you next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here behind enemy lines.
We're not allowed, not without electoral.
Go fuck yourself. Is that clear?
Teeth, don't let them have sway. Conservative battalions walking them out, marching through the streets while the buffoons all shout. Move in the shadows. this Democrat cage.